What I remember most about the birth itself is we had decided on the name Bréidi. We did not decide on a middle name yet. I was on the operating table. I said, Bréidi's middle name needs to be Robert. And I said, my grandfather was the strongest person I've ever known, physically, emotionally, mentally, and it fit. Bréidi needed to be strong physically, emotionally, and mentally, and it was a perfect match. And Tim said, you're right, his middle name will be Robert.
I mean, we really had no idea what to expect. Was he going to make it? It was a really scary time.
It all comes and goes. It all comes and goes. All these woes. All these woes.
And they came in and told us that the first thing they needed to do was check for an infection. They explained that they would put me on bed rest immediately, and they would attempt to get me as close to 34 weeks as possible. That was 29 weeks. So I thought, okay, I can do bed rest for 5 weeks. It'll be tough with Cooper. They had mentioned maybe I would be able to come home and be on bed rest.
So Julie could have been in the hospital for a long time. But I mean, Bréidi was born the next day when they determined that Julie had an infection, and that, you know, it was safer for Bréidi to be out of the womb than in the womb at that point. They
immediately started getting me ready for a C-section.
Julie's first pregnancy with Cooper was a breeze. Everything went really well. And so I guess our expectations of her being pregnant with Bréidi, you know, we thought everything would be similar. You know, we thought it would be piece of cake.
I remember my first thought being that Bréidi wasn't going to make it.
We didn't know anything, obviously. We didn't know what the problem was, why this was happening.
We don't truly know what caused Bréidi to be born early. I mean, we do know that the amniotic fluid was leaking. We don't know the reason for that. We don't know how I got the infection. So my mind, I'm the kind of person that needs to have answers to things. So I blame myself. It must have been something that I did. And I struggled with that for a long time, and Tim really helped me with that, because he said, you know what, we won't ever know. And we can't change it now anyway, so we need to move on. And he's exactly right. No matter what the real reason is, which we will never know, I can't change it. Tim and I talked about it, and we said, of course, we would love Bréidi no matter, you know, what issues he has. So we felt guilty, hoping that everything would be normal, but at the same point, every parent wants everything to be normal. The doctors believed it was some sort of syndrome, so they had the genetics doctor come in and take a look at Bréidi, and they did some chromosome testing, and that was really scary. There were some things physically with Bréidi. His ears, they thought the placement of his ears was low on his head. They thought his breastbones were close together. And he had an abrasion on the top of his head that was from the fluid being low in the womb.
So for those first 2 weeks, until we got that particular test back, that was a really scary thought. I mean, thankfully for us, that test came back normal.
But Tim said, you know, we're going to love him either way, so why are we so worried? And it's just, from the moment you find out you're pregnant, you worry. My parents always told me that about me, that they still worry about me, and now I understand where they're coming from. We always worked as a great team. You know, from when we very first started dating, we were always a good team, and we always were able to accomplish things. And I think that was really put to the test with our NICU experience.
Watching him in there, not being able to take Bréidi home, those first couple of days they're brutal. I mean, there's so many mixed emotions. You know, you don't know whether you want to be happy because Bréidi is alive. I mean, obviously you are, but at the same time, I mean, seeing them go through that it's devastating. we had a lot of family and friends that helped us, and couldn't have done it without them, obviously.
A good friend of mine said, listen, I know you just went through this experience, and my family is going through this. Is there any way you could reach out, in email, of course, and contact her and just see if you can support her? So I started, and I just basically told Julie my story in email.
My biggest help has been Michelle, who is a woman that I met through my mom's cousin's wife.
And so Julie and I communicated strictly through email, which was really interesting because I felt like I had a really strong connection with her because we were sharing the same experience.
I liked her right from the start. She was very genuine in what she said. She explained her whole situation to me, and a lot of what her son went through, Brady also went through, and it had only been a year earlier, so she knew the doctors that I would talk about. She knew the nurses. The boys were in the same NICU.
I mean, Julie was so relieved when they started speaking to each other. She just felt like she had that go-to person. Whenever there was a question, she said, I'll ask Michelle. I'll ask Michelle. I'll send Michelle an email.
I've just been talking to her recently about her transition back to work. What was that like? I'm going back very soon, and it was something that I felt anxiety about, and she's kind of my go-to person, and she's been wonderful. She's been way more helpful than I think she even realizes.
Everything was very stressful. Everything was new, and no one really understood everything. So there's a lot of things that you have to piece together. It's like piecing together a puzzle, but at the same time recognizing that you have a baby who doesn't come home with you. Okay, so the baby stays at the hospital and you come home, and you have to now focus on being an advocate for the baby in the hospital and also being at home with your family, because you're still a mother and you're still a partner, and you're still a wife.
Julie, she put all of her personal feelings aside. I mean, her big concern was, of course, Brady. And then after a few days, it turned to Cooper's well-being as well. He wasn't sure what was going on. And at the time, Cooper was only, just about a year and a half or so, a little more than a year and a half old.
One of us would stay with Cooper, one of us would go to the NICU. We had a lot of friends and family help out with Cooper as well. In the NICU, there's something called bradycardia, and it would go up on the screen every once in a while. It would say Brady, and I thought, oh wow, look at that! They have Brady's name up on the screen, and it doesn't mean his name. It means I believe it's a slower heart rate. So if Brady's heart rate would slow down, an alarm would go off and it would say Brady on the screen. And it wasn't until one of the nurses said, Brady's a strange name for a baby in the NICU. And I said, why is that? And then she explained that to me. I was able to touch Brady that first day. They have little things on the side of the incubators that you can open it up, and you wash your hands, you scrub your hands real good when you go in, and you're able to reach through and touch your baby. And I was able to touch Brady that very first day. I was able to hold him on March 8th, which was 3 days after he was born. And basically what they did is they helped me, because I wasn't comfortable really, handling Brady at that point. He was so tiny and had so many wires. So what the nurse did is she got this real comfy chair for me, a reclining chair, and got some blankets. And she basically took Brady out and she stuffed him down my shirt. And he was so tiny that he was just right up against my skin, and he was moving around and making little sounds, and we bundled him up and put a little hat on him, and it was wonderful. And that was the skin-to-skin kangaroo care. That was definitely my favorite way to hold Brady, because I felt that was very important bonding time, and I got to feel his heartbeat. I could feel every little squirm that he made, and it's a nice way of keeping him warm too. That's actually how it got started, to help keep babies warm in the NICU. They would put them right against their parents' skin.
Yeah, holding Brady was great. I was scared to death, nervous. I mean, it was frightening. I mean, he only weighed 2.5 pounds at that point. And he's hooked up to, different monitors, and he had wires and feeding tubes and everything. And so that presented a whole nother level of challenge. You had to be extremely gentle because of all these wires and tubes. And you know, when we were in the NICU, there were a lot of babies in there that had serious issues. And I mean, it was a very sobering place.
And there's two sides to the NICU. There's the more intensive care side, and then there's the side that the babies are on that are transitioning out. And it's a big day when you get moved. I remember the day that Brady was moved. He had been on the intensive side, and I walked in and I started to walk over to where his bed was, and one of the nurses said, "Hey, Brady's mom, he's over here, he's over here." And it was a great feeling, because I thought that is a step in the right direction. There's not a whole lot you can do for your baby when you're in the NICU. So the tiny little things like changing their diaper and checking their temperature become so huge. They had what they call care times, and Brady's were 3, 6, 9, and 12 around the clock. So whenever possible, we tried to be there for as many care times as we could. Obviously, you can't make them all. One of the things Tim and I decided early on was that we were going to limit Brady's visitors in the NICU. Germs to me were a huge issue, and I thought, you know, it's not really the place to come and see a baby. So we decided that we would allow my parents and Tim's parents to see their grandson. But other than that, we didn't allow visitors to the NICU, and we felt that was the right decision. One of the big mistakes, one thing that I do regret, is taking Cooper into the NICU. We wanted him to meet his little brother, so the day after Brady was born, and we took him in for not even 10 minutes, and very quickly I realized it was a big mistake. Cooper became really nervous. He was chewing on his hands. He was totally not himself. It was overwhelming for a 2-year-old, and I look back and I think, you know, what was I thinking? I mean, I know what I was thinking. I wanted Cooper to meet his little brother. I wanted him to see him, but I said to Tim, we won't do that again. The next time the boys see each other will be the day that Brady comes home from the hospital. After 50 days in the NICU, Brady came home, and Tim's mom was here, and my parents were here, and they had decorated the house and put balloons out and welcome home. And Cooper was very excited at that point to see his little brother, and very curious. It was also difficult because Brady was so small, and you know, he had the sore on his head that we really had to be cautious when Cooper wanted to see Brady, but we didn't want to discourage that either. So we let Cooper, you know, touch Brady and everything with our supervision, but he always wanted to know what was going on with Brady. It was neat right from the beginning. Cooper. Cooper's your typical 2-year-old. He's full of energy. He's rambunctious, but he's a great big brother. He loves his little brother. You know, he likes to tickle Brady. He likes to play peekaboo with Brady. And I have a feeling that he's going to be a protective big brother. If he wakes up in the morning before Brady does, right away he wants to know, where's Brady? Or if Cooper gets up for a nap and Brady's sleeping, you know, where's Brady? So he's very concerned, he's very aware of him, and he's a good big brother. The first few days home were definitely a big adjustment. The first few weeks home, Brady was not sleeping at night. He had some pretty severe reflux issues, and if we would lay him down to sleep at night, the milk would literally start to come back up to the point where we could hear it gurgling in his throat, and he would cry and fuss, and we would pick him up, we'd rock him till he'd fall asleep, and as soon as we would put him down, the same thing would happen. So I would take a 2-hour shift and hold Brady while Tim slept, and then when I couldn't stay awake anymore, I would wake him up and he would take over and I'd get some rest. And we did that for weeks, and we would wake up in the morning not knowing how we were going to get through the day, being so exhausted, and it was very difficult.
So the days are challenging. Julie has it tough. I tell her often I have it easy. I get up and go to work. You know, she's here with a toddler and a newborn who's very demanding, and I clearly have it much easier than she does right now.
Julie had a great blog, and so I was able to go on and see her blog and kind of get her temperature and how she was feeling, and if I saw something in there, I would shoot her an email and try to encourage her, you know, through whatever she was going through.
May 18th, 2013. Today is Brady's due date. I'm one of those people that has to figure out why and how things happen. But this week, I feel like I've been focusing on it a lot more. Although the last 11 weeks have been tough, and Brady had a very difficult start to life, he has also shown us that he's a fighter. From the tiniest acorn grows the mighty oak. One of my friends went through chemotherapy and with breast cancer, and she blogged through her experience, and she told me that it was very helpful to her and it was very therapeutic. I was able to get my thoughts out on paper. I was able to sit down at the end of the day and kind of go through what happened in the day. And it also helped me process what the doctors were telling me. To be able to explain it to somebody else, I had to really understand it, and which I obviously wanted to do, but it helped me learn the language and it helped me to explain things to people. And I plan on doing that until he has his plastic surgery, and I think to me that's going to be the point where I might be able to put this all behind us.
She has a great ability to just remain calm. You know, when Cooper's running around, you know, screaming because he wants a cracker or something, and you know, Brady's in the background crying because he's not sleeping. She has a pretty good ability to remain calm in those situations, so I admire everything she's done. Not just with our boys, but in life in general. She's a great person.
He always puts other people first. He's always worried about, am I okay? You know, and doesn't really take his own thoughts and feelings into consideration. Cooper and Brady are very, very fortunate to have him as their dad, and I'm very fortunate to have him as my husband. The emotional recovery is very big. It's ongoing, really. I mean, I still feel like I'm emotionally recovering. It's something that is always a part of your life, and something like this, if it doesn't change a person, you know, I wouldn't understand that. I think something like this has to change you. And I wanted it to change me for the better. I wanted to make sure that I was really treasuring every moment and not thinking that my family was immune to anything, you know, tragic that could happen. I love having family time, you know, just the four of us playing downstairs in the playroom. It's the little things. And I won't say I didn't appreciate those before, I did, but I appreciate them even more now. You know, Tim and I talk about, okay, next summer we're gonna go on a family vacation. Next summer we're gonna be able to do this. And I don't wanna rush things. I have to keep reminding myself of that, but at the same time, there's a whole lot to look forward to. I'm very happy that Cooper and Brady are so close in age. I'm looking forward to them playing together in the backyard, and I always tease that when they get in a fight, I'm rooting for Brady. He had the tough start. He was the little guy, so I'm rooting for Brady.